Right. Let me switch on my microphone. A very good morning to all of you, the many of you. Good morning. We're here for Introduction to the Study of Language 2, and I can tell the microphone is somewhat over the top. Okay. Before we set off into our next journey into English linguistics, I would like to introduce two colleagues from the organization ISEC. They will tell you exactly what this organization is and does in the first 5 minutes of this lecture, and I hand over to them now. Here you go.
Thank you very much. So first of all, we'll show a very short video. It's a 3-minute video, and then afterwards we will just explain what it's about.
We can, we must be the first generation to end extreme poverty.
The generation
most determined
to fight injustice and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
And this is how it will get done. The global goals.
A 15-year plan
For everyone, everywhere.
with no one left behind.
We will live in a world
Where nobody
Anywhere
lives in extreme poverty.
where no one
goes hungry.
where no one wakes in the morning asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world where no child has died.
diseases we know how to cure. And where proper health care
Is a lifelong right for us all.
We will live in a world
everyone goes to school
And education gives us the knowledge
And skills
for a fulfilling life.
We will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities to thrive
And be powerful.
and safe.
we cannot succeed if afterwards get back.
We will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
and proper toilets
At school and at work.
We will live in a world where there's sustainable energy for everyone.
Heat, light,
and power for the whole planet.
Without destroying the planet.
We will live in a world where economies prosper.
a new wealth.
Lead to decent jobs.
For everyone.
And we will live in a world where our industry,
our infrastructure and our
Best innovations.
Are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
we will live in a world
Where prejudices and extremes of inequality
Are defeated.
Inside our countries and between different countries. Where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
where we replace
what we consume.
Planet where we put back what we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back from climate change.
where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas. Where we restore
and protect
Life on land.
Forests,
Animals.
the earth itself.
with peace between and inside countries.
Where all governments are open.
And answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
With everyone equal before the law.
where all countries and we their people
Work together.
Partnerships of all kinds.
To make these global goals a reality.
These are the United Nations global goals.
for sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Okay, so I hope you liked the video. And so as you can see, we're here from ISEC. My name is Carmen, and this is my colleague Lisa. I hope you can hear me because I don't like using the microphone. So if you haven't heard of ISEC before, we're the biggest youth leadership organization. And we've been striving to empower young people to develop their leadership skills and cross-cultural understanding since 1948. And today we're present in over 125 countries. So there are a lot of opportunities. Why is this working? Or can you just wait for the next? Sorry. One back. One forward. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I can. Thanks. So we have different opportunities where you can go abroad with us. We have volunteering experiences. We offer internships. So today I will only present you one. So it's a little volunteer program. It's lasting 6 to 8 weeks. And where you can actually go abroad and tackle one of the issues and work towards the goals we have presented in the previous video. So creatively teaching English in kindergartens in Malaysia. It can be reducing food waste in Colombia, then getting active in gender equality in Egypt, so a lot of different topics you can focus on. On our opportunity portal, you can actually go there today, sign up, apply for different opportunities. There is a search tool, you can actually find an opportunity that is suitable for things you like to do in the future, and etc. What we're also doing, sorry. So what we're also doing, we have a program that's called Volunteer on Campus. This is what Lisa and Mary are doing. So to explain very simple, let's say it's like a startup, where you have different departments. You have a department for social projects, because all the projects I just mentioned are created by us. Then we also have the department that is focusing on companies, for networking events. We have marketing department. And inside of these, let's say, small startups here in Vienna, you can develop additional skills, meet people, learn about public speaking, designing, anything that you have interest in. And then afterwards, you can also go out. So you have these different opportunities you can do with us. And yes. And if you want to find out more, then you can check out our website, our opportunity portal, also Facebook, Instagram, and we'll have an info evening. If you want to join us on campus, this is the last week where you can sign up online. So on Thursday, we'll have an info evening at Uniw. It will be from 6 to 7:30. But once you want to sign up there, if you want to hear more, then you want to get a few hours. We also have treatment plans this week. We will not have one in English, but next week we might have one. So we're going to do a job, just a process, and also find an opportunity, like internship, if you're doing your bachelor studies. So here's the Thursday, 6 and 30. The exact room. Then maybe we can write it down as well, but it should be in the newsletter that you receive on. Good. That's it from our side. If not, then we should go to the lecture and have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Isaac missionaries. I would like to encourage you to really check out these opportunities. This is a very well-established and well-reputed organization. Just press F5. Yeah. Okay, and now we set off into Introduction to the Study of Language 2. As you will anticipate, building on Introduction to the Study of Language 1, which you already visited. Let me introduce our entire team for this lecture. My name is Christiane Dalton-Puffer, and
I'm Julia Scala, and I'm Vanya Vukovic.
And Vanya will be your e-tutor this semester, so she will be tending to the Moodle platform, uploading their extra materials, study questions, etc., etc. This is the first time an e-tutor is working for Introduction to the Study of Language 1, so it's all in the build-up and the facilities won't be as rich as they already are for Introduction to the Study of Language 1. I just said 1 earlier, never mind. This is 2 and it's new. All right, so this is Vanya, this is Julia, and we will be taking turns in presenting this lecture. Let me just, what's that?
So you will be seeing me basically in 3 weeks' time for the bit of morphology, then we switch again, semantics with Christiane Dalton-Puffer, and I'll be teaching you syntax towards the end of the semester again. And then you pick up with psycholinguistics.
Something's wrong here. What's... Okay, let's see. Yeah, all right. So today, this is our program, and Julia will come back in a moment to have a say about alternating the topics. As you all also are familiar with already, we continue to use those 2 course books that you already own and have used in the first lecture, Yule's The Study of Language, and Plagg and co-authors Introduction to English Linguistics. There is a 3rd edition out now, Should anyone have access to that one, that's fine. But second edition is fine, and the e-book, which is available through the university library, is actually the second edition. A strong recommendation to buy now, if you haven't already done so, is the pronunciation dictionary, because in the second semester your transcription skills will have to develop into the active mode, and the exam will contain active transcription questions. So when you go practice transcribing, having a dictionary at hand on your desk is really, really good. And this is the dictionary that follows the standard that we use, right? There are, of course, lots of online facilities, but not all of them, actually a lot of them, do not use the IPA set, yeah, the IPA symbol set. So it's always a bit tricky if you just go and pick up any website for support, pronunciation, transcription support. This is our schedule for the semester, and Julia.
You can also find that one on Moodle and download it and take it with you if you want to. But basically, so we'll start you off with phonetics and phonology on a suprasegmental level, because you know there's also a transcription class which started, as I understand, this morning for the transcription part. So this is more the suprasegmental part. Then I will pick up with morphology on the 17th for 2 sessions, and then Ms. Dalton-Buffer will do semantics with you, and then we will have 1 week where there won't be a class, because that's when the 3rd sitting of last semester's course will take place. But in that week, Vanya will actually offer a face-to-face tutorial to practice what you've heard about morphology and phonetics and phonology. Yeah, and then we'll pick up with syntax and psycholinguistics. And in the end, we hope to actually wrap that all up in a question session where you're encouraged to bring whatever you feel needs practicing more. We'll have a prepared session on that before you sit your final exam.
Should there be any questions at any point, please raise your hand and ask the question. All right, you are already advanced students, so you know the practices of the different times when you can take the exam. First one at the very end of the semester, at the end of January, then the second opportunity, beginning of March, third opportunity halfway through the summer semester, and the fourth opportunity at the end of the summer semester. This is the exam that's based on this semester running right now. I haven't put the exact dates there yet, because apart from the first January session, which will be the 30th, the last Monday in January, we don't know them yet, but they will become available on Univis well ahead of time. So just to remind you of the overall workflow of this lecture, there is the lecture, which you can attend in person on Monday mornings, but which we also stream, and which you can listen to at home or re-listen or listen in again when you're studying and working your way through the material yourself. There are readings, the course books, but also additional readings for some of the topics, which will be available on the Moodle platform. The slides every week also contain indications of what the readings are for preparing for next week. Then, of course, there are the slides, which are always available ahead of time on the Moodle platform. Today's slides I uploaded already in advance, but I did add a couple of slides this very morning, so I will exchange that file later on. Then the readings to do again after the lecture, to actually just also get different wordings for the ideas, for the concepts that we have been going through. this usually helps to understand complex matter if you have got different voices expressing the same ideas. So some of the voices are written, and you've got one oral voice which will be ours during the lectures. And there is the transcription course and the Moodle platform with the e-tutorial. All right? Transcription practice for you to choose either Tuesday afternoon or Monday morning. And I realize only now that we actually have got an overlap. Haha. So maybe we should try to talk to Iris Vukovic if she could start at 9 o'clock, 9 sharp, and finish at 1:45. Right. But actually at the moment it is the first part of the semester which is really for the first lecture. So I would recommend you to go along anyway and attend the whole transcription class, but the active transcription will be practiced more intensively, or actually practiced then in the second half of the semester, which will start sometime at the beginning of the second half of November, or third week of November. But I will ask the 2 lecturers to put those dates up on the Moodle platform. Okay, so we actually go into our subject matter. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Vanya. You will see them again. And, well, let's have fun together. Yes, now it seems to be working. That's excellent. Okay, just to talk a bit more about transcription right now. It's not reliable this morning, so let's do it like this. It's taking a long time. So you're familiar with this slide from last semester, I take it, where you have a quick overview of the symbols, the IPA symbols that you need for transcribing English. I have some more slides at the end of today's session, which I added today, which are brand new and really we agreed on between the transcription class people and the introductory lecture people, so that we have a 100% overlap between what we are telling you. It has turned out that we have started diverging a bit from semester to semester, so we have now sort of roped ourselves in again. But that will come later. You know those conventions already. Just a quick recap. When we want to make clear, we are talking about a spelling, we use the angled brackets. When we want to make clear that we are talking about pronunciation, we use either square brackets or slashes. And you also know the difference between the two. If we use the square brackets, we also do a detailed transcription, a narrow transcription, also indicating allophones of phonemes. In the phonemic transcription, which is the one that you will have to do in the exam, except for one little piece, that there we use the phonemic symbols. Okay. And no, you do not have to render any allophones. So whatever is between the slashes represents roughly the phonological level. But today we will go beyond those individual sounds symbolized by the IPA alphabet. We will move into supra-segmental phonology. Now, just to what you did in the last semester in the 3 phonology sessions was, by and large, segmental phonology. You did work on the syllable, that was already suprasegmental. but the largest part was on the different segments, on the consonants, on the vowels. In suprasegmental phonology, we go beyond that, looking at the properties of connected speech, right? Because obviously, when we look at segments, we tend to remain on the word level, how phonemes combine to make up words, but of course, spoken language does not consist of individual words like that, but. Spoken language is a continuous string of sound, and this is what suprasegmental phonology looks into. Different phenomena that become important when we listen to and when we analyze connected speech. One of those phenomena is stress, which is a property of syllables. Betonung, stress, and intonation, Intonation, which is a phenomenon that comprises larger units than the syllable and has to do with changes in pitch, modulations of the voice in terms of the level of the tone. We will talk about that at more length very soon. Right? So, our first topic here then is stress. Now, in our everyday language use, of course, we use the word stress a lot, don't we? I'm so stressed out. I've got a lot of stress. Are you very stressed? Something is very stressful. What does this actually... So, it's some kind of nervous tension we're under. What does this use of stress imply? What is it that causes stress? We feel pressure. We feel pressure. There is some force working on us, even if only metaphorically, right? It's the psychological use of the word stress has been imported from engineering, and in engineering it means pressure, okay? And as a technical term in phonetics, it also has to do with pressure, with physical force, in the sense that stress is a quality of a syllable that gives it more prominence, more force, right? How is this? And we can take 2 points of view on this prominence. We can look at it from the side of the production of the sounds of the syllable. There we need to look at how our articulatory organs work together to produce this prominence, this greater force. And then on the other side we have the perception. How do we as listeners actually perceive differences between syllables in terms of prominence, right? So in production, this extra force, this stronger pressure, comes from using stronger muscular pressure, stronger muscular activity in our chest muscles, basically, also the diaphragm, the Zwerchfell, so that the air is expelled from our lungs with somewhat greater force, right? And also the other muscles in our speech apparatus, the muscles in our mouth, the muscles around our larynx, they operate with more power, if you like, right? And actually in production, it's the spoken language, our whole body is involved, so we also underscore stress with other movements of our body. We may raise our eyebrows, open our eyes more widely. We use gestures, or if we're talking very emphatically, we might even move our upper body a bit more. You can observe people, they have different styles, the use of different movements of different strength, of course, depending on how emphatically they're speaking, and it's also a bit of a personality matter, of course. But it all goes back to a variation in muscular energy that we put into our speech production. Okay? Speech production is a physical event. It's movements that our body makes. So that is, our body makes alternations in stronger muscular force, weaker muscular force. It's one of our bodily rhythms. There are lots of other rhythms in our physiology, and this is another one. On the side of the listener, the perception of word stress, it simply means we hear certain parts of words as more prominent, right? More prominent than the rest. And it's always a relative thing. There is no absolute value of stress that you have to reach in order for a syllable to be perceived as stressed. It's always relative in relation to the surroundings, in relation to the syllables before and after. And there are three parameters, well, actually 4 parameters that come in here. A very important one is the pitch, the tonhöhe, because when there is a stronger airstream, the sound rises in pitch. So there is always a pitch movement on the stressed syllables. Also, because more movement takes more time, stressed syllables are longer, they are louder. That's probably the most obvious result of more air, means more loudness, more force, right? So they're louder, and in some languages more than others, and English is a language where it is more than others, stressed syllables also often tend to differ in quality. Yeah? The central sound, the vowel of the stressed syllable, in stressed syllables and unstressed syllables, we tend to have different vowel sets. And the strongest effect in the perception of stress is produced by a combination of pitch and length, right? But as I just said, especially for English, also quality plays an important role. There's an interesting further classification, if you like, of syllables that is very closely interrelated with the production of stress, and that is an interaction of syllable structure with stress, right? So we have strong syllables and weak syllables. The distinction between those two lies in what phoneme combinations are represented in them. So a strong syllable is always one that has a long vowel or a diphthong, yeah? Either that, or a short vowel plus a coda. So there's always more than just a short vowel there. Long vowel, diphthong, or short vowel plus consonantal coda. And those are usually stressed. You can find strong syllables in unstressed positions, but that is not the most frequent case at all. Usually, strong syllables are stressed, primary or secondary stress. Yeah? So we've got a couple of examples there. Photo. Yeah? Pho is a syllable with a diphthong, so it's a strong syllable. But in the very same word, yeah, the toe also has a diphthong, is also a strong syllable, but it's not stressed. Concert, same case. Con has got a short vowel plus a consonant, strong syllable is stressed. Polite, the p is a weak syllable. Consists of an onset, but only a short vowel and not no coda. So unstressed, whereas the light is a strong syllable containing a diphthong and a final t in its coda. So usually strong syllables are stressed, but can also be unstressed. And here on the screen you have the unstressed strong syllables in bold print, right? Weak syllables, on the other hand, contain a short vowel or usually a schwa. Yeah? They have a schwa as the nucleus or a syllabic consonant, or they have a short full vowel a, e, I, o, u, yeah? As a nucleus and but no coda. Yeah? If they have a schwa, they might have a coda. So, in the word fashionable, we have the fa, the first syllable is stressed, but then we have sh, n, bl, three syllables that are weak, sh with a schwa, n, also schwa, and bl, we have a syllabic L in the final syllable as its nucleus. And so we have this interaction between syllable structure and stress. Very important also for the active, that is, this is a very strong characteristic of the English language. This relative divergence between the sound structure of stressed syllables and unstressed syllables, between strong and weak syllables, this alternation, and that's also important to be able to render in active transcription. Okay, let's just have a tiny exercise and look at these 4 words. Write them down with write them down again and use capital letters for the stressed syllable. Okay. Are you done? Okay. This is not a standardized way of doing things. This is not IPA transcription, but it is used in many textbooks also, and I also believe that it's a good way of visualizing the prominence of stressed syllables when you first start to work on identifying stressed syllables. Potato, opportune, alive, larynx, right? In the a standardized transcription, this would look like this, right, with the stress marks in front of the stressed syllable. If the stress mark is raised here at the top, that is the primary stress, and here we have inopportune, we have a secondary stress. That has to do with the tendency of English, as many other languages, to want to have sort of stress pulses at regular intervals, more or less regular intervals, and since there are two syllables before the stressed one inopportune, the first one gets a secondary stress. So here we've got primary and secondary stress. Just one more remark on the word larynx. Two syllables, and the second syllable is actually a strong syllable, right? Rynx, short vowel, but a pretty strong coda there, x, yeah? And so probably also native speakers who've never heard this word before might also go ahead and read it out, for instance, larynx, yeah? Because of this tendency to stress strong syllables, especially in the loan vocabulary of English and more technical words and so on. There is a tendency to also have quite a few unstressed strong syllables. And that is why, in many cases, one just has to learn the stress pattern as one learns the rest of the word. Its sound shape and its meaning, and also the stress pattern. And having said that, that leads me directly into the next slide, namely the fact that in the creation of complex words, special rules kick in with some suffixes because they affect stress placement. The basic rule of English is, much as it is in German, you have a word like mother, and then you can add affixes, motherly, motherless, motherhood, mothering, etc., and the stress always stays on that base word. But with the Latin Romance vocabulary that was imported, the tendency from those languages to have stresses moving around in words was imported also in the English language, and this is a set of quite frequent word formation suffixes which do have such an effect. So you have the base word, like in the example advantage, and if you add the suffix, the us, then the main stress of the word is moved further back so that it lands on the syllable just before the suffix. Advantage, advantageous. Or photograph, photography. Proverb, proverbial. Now try to do the remaining ones. You have to work out what the base word is, of course. Could be a noun, could be an adjective, could be a verb. What about this, the first one in the line where it said, what about this one? What's the base word? Climate. So we've got cli, and the adjective is stressed on climatic, okay? The next one is base word perfect, and then we have perfection. Okay, so stress always jumps on to the syllable just before the suffix. What about the next one? Injury. Okay, and then injurious, right? Next one, base word tranquil and tranquility, okay? And the final one, reflect or reflexive. Actually, here that's not a good example. I have to look for another one because already the verb is stressed on the final syllable. Okay. This was still word stress and the interaction of syllable structure, strong syllables, weak syllables, with word stress, plus the interaction of morphology, namely a set of certain word-forming affixes on the word stress in the complex derivatives. But of course, as I've already said before, language does not consist of individual words. It consists usually we utter utterances, and they are usually more complex than just individual words. So we speak in sentences, and each sentence can be pronounced in different ways, with stresses on different parts of the sentence, thus creating different meanings for the sentence. Certain words, especially the function words, have actually got different pronunciations depending on whether they carry stress or not, which gives us, and we will say a little bit more about this in a minute, the difference between so-called weak forms and strong forms of function words. This is a very strong characteristic of English as well, which is not shared by other languages that you may know. The words that tend to be unstressed normally in a sentence are the words that carry the grammatical functions, the function words. Can you think of function words in English? If you look at the language that's there on the slide, pick up a few function words from there. Function words express grammatical meanings. So, for instance, articles or prepositions or auxiliaries, conjunctions, more preposition, article, okay? So those are the kinds of words that tend to be unstressed. Okay, let's have an example. Boring sentence. The lecture has been moved from C1 to C2. This would be a neutral. The lecture has been moved from C1 to C2. Now, these would be our content words, the lexical words that convey the lexical meaning in the sentence, and the ones that are still in black, those are the function words that express the relations between the content words. If we're talking about one specific lecture and not any lecture, definite article. When the moving took place, is taking place, will take place, through has been present perfect, and the relationship, the locality of the moving, the origin and the goal of the moving, from, to, the prepositions. But there could be a special situation where we want to say this. Yeah, the lecture has been moved to C2, not from C2. Where we put an emphasis on this directionality, and then we would stress the prepositions. And then these prepositions would be pronounced in their strong form. Yeah? And the strong form of to would be this. Whereas in the sentence above, the weak form would simply have a schwa, to, from C1 to C2. Or another example, at this time of the year, many people suffer from allergies. Actually, well, also at the moment still is more of a springtime example. At this time of the year, many people suffer from allergies. So that's one variant, but it could also be at this time of the year, many people, also people would then be in blue, suffer from allergies. Yeah? The gist of this here is that weak forms are used when a function word is unstressed. And connect up unstressed, no stress, no pressure, no force, weak forms, okay? Weak forms are the ones that don't have the pressure, the articulatory force. And therefore no prominence. Most function words have weak forms, but not all of them. There are about 40 of them in English, a closed set, more a pretty small closed set. Prepositions, articles, conjunctions, and here pronouns. And here you've got 5 examples, and auxiliary verbs. You have an example from each of them. All of them, they share the fact that they're all function words, they have no lexical content, but serve to express relations, grammatical relations between the lexical words. In other languages, some of those functions are expressed with inflectional morphemes, for instance, but not in English. But that is something that we are going to talk about also a bit later in our morphology section. Yeah? Talking about the strong forms of function words, in some cases you have to use the strong form at the end of a sentence. What did you do that for? And so you should. So if there is a function word at the end of a sentence, at the end of an utterance, then it's got to have its strong form. Or if it's a case of contrast, like we had, it was moved to C2, not from C2, or here, from Berlin, not to Berlin. Or in cases of special emphasis, yeah, you can do it. Contrasting with you can do it. Yeah? You can do it, you can do it. Or you must come. You must come. You must come. Or if we are citing something, yeah? Like in this sentence, must is emphasized. And one mode of speaking where we use strong forms of everything is, of course, dictation, because we speak very slowly so that people can write down what we are dictating. Up until now, we've been talking again about individual words, even syllables. The weak forms, the function words, which are usually pronounced as weak forms, are almost exclusively one-syllable words. Yeah? Now we have a look at one step higher level of rhythmical organization of English, and that level is the foot. You may have heard this expression when you studied poetry, der Versfuß. Yeah? I don't know if in the introduction to English literature, of course. So the foot is used as a concept both in the study of the artful use of language, but also in the study of language as such, as we do it in linguistics. It is the name for a rhythmical unit. Yeah? A unit needs to have some substance, and the minimal substance of a foot is one syllable, one stressed syllable. That's the minimum content of a foot, but a foot can also consist of more than this one stressed syllable. It always contains only one stressed syllable and any number of unstressed ones. The crucial idea about the foot and the feet is that the spoken language has a certain rhythm with stressed syllables occurring at roughly identical intervals. If we're speaking slowly, those intervals are longer. If we're speaking very fast, then those intervals shrink a bit. But we cannot stretch or compress at will. Yeah? So when we are speaking slowly, our feet tend to be filled maybe with only one or two syllables. When we're speaking quickly, more syllables get squeezed into one foot. Yeah? And so if a foot contains only one syllable, then this syllable can be quite long and drawn out. If a foot contains lots of syllables, each of them will have to get shorter. So a foot is a unit of time. It's not. It is. You can measure it, of course, but you cannot say, well, a foot in English is 322 milliseconds. Yeah, you cannot say that. There is, of course, variation according to speech tempo, but as with all natural activities, there is a rhythm also to speech. And English has this tendency to squash syllables, relatively many syllables, into its feet, and those syllables then have to be reduced, which is also why we get those weak forms. Yeah? It's all connected. What I'm talking about when I say if there is only one stressed syllable, it can be long, and if there are many syllables in the foot, they must be shorter. Let's have a look at variations of an utterance. If we say, John bought 4 red roses, the feet are indicated by the slashes here. Yeah? That's another use of the slash in phonetics. John bought 4 red roses. Johnny bought me 14 yellow roses. The utterance as a whole gets longer, but not twice as long as John bought 4 red roses. So the extra syllables have to get a little bit shorter. And if we squeeze even more syllables into each foot, like Jonathan bought her a 14-foot yellow convertible, then what happens to the identical syllables? If we look at just Johnny bought Jonathan, the John, the actual duration of the John gets shorter step by step from one sentence to the other. Or the same with bought, right? Bought me, bought her. Or the 4, as in 4, 14, 14 foot. So, as I said on introducing the foot, I said we're moving up one level of organization from the syllable. We started off with phonemes, then we had and syllables, then feet, and now we move one step higher still to tone units. And the next level would then be the whole utterance. So up until now, with syllables and feet, we've been talking about stress. The force, articulatory force, length of vowels, pitch, individual pitch of stressed syllables. Now we're moving on to the level of intonation. We're going to have to take up stress again, because we cannot really talk about intonation without stress. If we're looking at this sentence, are you coming to Majorca with us this summer? Are you coming to Majorca with us this summer? So that would be, in my view, the most neutral reading. The most stress is on Majorca, and that is also where our pitch movement sits. But we can say this sentence in many different ways. Are you coming to Majorca with us this summer? Are you coming to Majorca with us this summer? Are you coming to Majorca with us this summer or next? Are you coming to Majorca with us this summer or in winter, because we also go there in winter, etc. So when we put emphasis, particular emphasis, on particular parts of the utterance, the stress moves, the pitch change in the most prominent syllable, of course, also moves there, and that then determines how the pitch continues in the rest of the utterance. We will have a look at this a bit further. But just 2 more contrastive examples. Has she grown? Neutral question. Has she grown? Has she grown? Then moving the main stress and the pitch movement to the she turns this into an exclamation. Did you win? Did she win? So that would be again an exclamation. So, going to show that stress and intonation interact. Now, intonation is an interesting animal in that it is quite elusive. It's clearly significant in our interaction. We read a lot of information from the intonation that people give to their utterances, but it's a bit difficult to define. It's been one of the difficult animals to catch or to capture in scientific terms. Still is. But it definitely has to do with pitch, with the pitch of our voice and how it is modulated over a whole utterance, right? the pitch, the tone height. Pitch, Tonhöhe, so we describe this in terms of, is it high, is it low, does it move up, does it move down? A crucial element of intonation is the coherent movement of the pitch, not only sort of momentary here, there, but also moving from one position to another. Of course, people's voice pitches differ a lot because of the anatomy of our vocal tracts and so on. What intonation is interested in and what falls within the province of intonation is only those pitch differences that carry some linguistic information and that are also under the speaker's control. Intentional pitch changes, and also pitch changes that are perceptible to the listeners. There are pitch changes that can be picked up with instruments, but that listeners don't pick up, and then they are just void of linguistic information, of course. An important distinction that one needs to make in linguistics is between different types of languages. The languages that we tend to be familiar with, the people here in this room, are all intonation languages, where pitch changes, the pitch contour extends over a whole utterance, over a phrase, over a sentence. And there can be meaning distinctive. Your pitch movement can turn a statement into a question. But there are also languages where the pitch contour is meaning distinctive at the word level, where a different pitch has the same function, meaning distinguishing function as a phoneme. And one of the prime tone languages is Chinese, Mandarin, which has got 4 tones. There are other East Asian languages that have got up to 8 tones. So in that sense, Mandarin Chinese is quite simple. And so you have the phoneme combination, ma, that's familiar to us. Ma or pa makes a difference. But for the Chinese speaker, it also makes a difference how the voice moves up or down on the R. So if you say ma, then it means mum. If you say ma, it means hemp, hanf. If you say ma, it means horse. And if you say ma, then it means gold. Ma. That is something that one has to be able to pick up and to produce if one wants to learn Chinese. And that is something that all human beings are equipped for when we are born. Everybody could learn Chinese from birth, of course. Okay, but for English, English is an intonation language, as German, so we do not distinguish word meanings by pitch movement, but only discourse-based meanings at the phrase or sentence level. There are 5 basic tones in English: level, tone, fall, rise, fall, rise, and that one I'm really not good at. Rise, fall, rise, fall. Good at in isolation. I can do it when I want to express something with the rise, fall, but producing it in isolation. And there are 3 levels: high, low, and mid. And again, these are relative levels, of course, because a young child's voice will always be a lot higher than a grown-up man's voice, and the grown-up woman's voice is somewhere in between. So it's always relative pitch changes. So the kinds of meanings that are conveyed by intonation are the meanings by which we want to express our intentions, and by which we use intonation to read our interlocutor's intentions from what they're saying. The difficulty with intonation is that, unlike phonemes, there is no one-to-one relationship between form and function. So you cannot really say, well, a rise means exactly this, or a full rise means always exactly that. So we can only talk about typical meanings of tones. Full is the most neutral one. So if you make a statement, like I'm doing here most of the time, I use fulls at the end of my utterances, giving new information. However, in English, a full is also used on WH questions. You can say the logic behind that is, well, the WH word, the who, where, what, and so on, why already signals, this is a question, so you don't also have to do a rise. Who did that? You don't say, who did that? Right? Whereas a yes-no question, would you like some bread? Yeah? It has a rise at the end. But what bread did you buy? What bread did you buy? It can also be done, but has a bit of a different significance to it. So the difference between full and rise in very basic but very useful terms is, if there's a full, something is final, that's it, end. If there is a rise, some more is to follow, which is why typically in most languages questions are connected with a rise, because then more is to follow from the interlocutor. Or also, people who do not want to give up speaking in a conversation, they also often keep their voice rising. We probably talked about that in the discourse part of the first Introduction to the Study of Language lecture, when you turn over change of speaking turns. People who go up with their voice all the time at the end of utterances are more difficult to interrupt than people who use lots of falls. Full rises, typical meaning is, I agree, but not 100%. Yeah? I've got a little reservation there. Yeah? We will go through some examples in a moment. The rise full, yes. No, that was without context. I'm just not good at doing it. Level tone, yes. I'm bored, yes. Have you done your homework? Yes. Have you done your homework? Yes! So that would be strong feelings of... Okay. Here we get a bit of a context in which to look at different intonation patterns. This is something worked out by David Crystal, and he describes 9 ways of saying yes in answer to the question, will you marry me? Yeah? you can look this up in the Cambridge Encyclopedia of the English Language. So, yes. Will you marry me? Yes. Most neutral. Quite unemotional. Will you marry me? Yes. And the higher the onset, yes. The higher the onset, the more emotionally involved. The third one, will you marry me? Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'll think about it. And he says here, wedding bells seem unlikely. So if somebody answers like that, nah, your chances of actually getting married to them probably not very high. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Low rise. Will you marry me? Yes. What's the catch? What do I have to do? What does that mean for me now? The middle one here, the full rise, so it's not only a question of directionality up or down, but also how much of the range you cover. So the full rise will be starting low and going up quite high. Yes. I'm having difficulty doing this one. High rise. Will you marry me? Yes. Yes. I'm a bit puzzled by this. Are you sure you know what you're saying? Now this one is a nasty one, of course. Will you marry me? Yes. Yes. Second one. Yes. And the final one. Yes. Yes. Will you marry me? Yes. How far are we? Okay. So that was about the possible movement, the possible pitch contours, and the likely meanings that the most likely meanings that these pitch contours have in an English conversation. But as you have already noticed, you always need a context. In this case, we need a question, which actually also carries a lot of cultural baggage with it. Right? Will you marry me? It's not just an innocent question like, have you seen my phone anywhere? Yeah. So intonation is not something that we can actually deal with in isolation. We always need to deal with it in a discourse, on the level of discourse, yeah, in a dialogic fashion. There's always a context, and only with the context can we read meanings from intonation. Now going back to the technical level of how this is realized in terms of sounds and the organization of speech. We're not talking about the meanings of intonation at the moment. The unit over which a pitch contour works is called the tone unit. Yeah? Because with intonation we're talking about tones, falling tones, rising tones, rise-fall tones, and so on. Yeah? Tone units are, again, higher levels of organization of speech. They may consist of 1 foot, several feet, and since 1 foot can consist of 1 or more syllables, also tone units can consist of maybe only 1 syllable. That's not very usual, but for instance with yes, that is exactly the case. Yeah? Up to several feet. each tone unit has to have a sort of a center of energy, if you like, the nucleus or the tonic syllable, the syllable where the strongest stress in the utterance falls, and that is the syllable where the pitch movement occurs. Yeah? In our yes example, we only had one syllable, so that was where the pitch movement occurred. But if we have a longer tone unit, of course, this syllable will be more prominent, or more equal among the other stressed syllables in the tone unit. The tonic syllable is more prominent than the other syllables. And each tone unit has one and only one tonic syllable. I think I am going to skip this because I would like to move on to another important chapter, namely another important aspect of connected speech. With also stress, also intonation is an aspect of connected speech. But now we are going to return to individual sounds and what happens to them when they are connected in speech. Now, if we string sounds and words together and our speech increases in speed and different sounds occur in neighborhood to each other, several things may happen. Some articulatory movements may be left out because of time pressure. Neighboring sounds may influence each other, so articulatory movement from a later sound may already be anticipated when we are uttering an earlier sound, or entire sounds may be left out altogether. So there are three major processes: assimilation, elision, and linking. Assimilation means, you know the word, something getting more similar. Yeah? The root similar is in this is in this word. So neighboring sounds influence each other. Elision, sounds may disappear. They may not be realized or deleted, which amounts to the same thing, and linking. In order to facilitate the smooth transitions between different articulatory movements, certain linking sounds may pop up, and in the case of the non-rhotic varieties of English, RP, for instance, that would be the linking R. Assimilation. There is regressive assimilation, which means that something which is actually going to come later already is anticipated, has a sort of backward influence on something that is earlier. We have, for instance, combinations across word boundaries where the earlier word ends either ends in an alveolar consonant, yeah, usually t or n, and the next word starts in a bilabial or in a velar. Yeah, where's the velar? Yeah, here. Yeah, and the alveolar anticipate the labial or velar quality and become assimilated, so that that person becomes that person. Or, so it could be the t and the p become assimilated, that person, or the t of that might become a glottal stop. Right? Right place, right place, right place. The full pronunciation of the alveolar and the onset, the bilabial onset, you will hear only in a dictation probably, or if somebody is speaking super clear. Yeah? In that place, yeah, in normal colloquial speech, people will always say that place. Yeah? Right, the right place. Let's have some meat pie. Or, ooh, he's a bad boy. Bad boy. Yeah? Which color? Light blue. Light blue. Hmm? Or quite good. Quite good. So the T is not articulated, but has turned into either a K or a glottal stop. Or in the case of 10 keys, it's not 10 keys, but 10 keys. Yeah, a velar nasal. Or S and Z, when they are followed by alveolar fricatives, sh, r, or y, they also become assimilate. This shoe, yeah? Those years, is she, is she. These are actually, this is wrong. Don't, please cross this out if you've printed out the slide. This is a is she, voiceless sh. Assimilation can also go the other direction. An earlier sound influences a later sound. So if we have in these individual words, that's not across word boundaries, these examples, but inside a word, open, open. Happen, happen. Bacon, 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 bacon. Broken, broken, broken. And something similar that happened with is she, in a combination of final t and initial y, got you, gotcha. Or would you, would you, would you. So these are processes that happen all the time, that you are also using most probably, but which probably have remained below your level of consciousness up until now. Same goes for elision. For instance, after a p, t, or k, the weak vowel can be lost, as in potato, today, 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 or in front of syllabic l, n, or r, night, please, call the police. And one that German speakers, for some reason, often hesitate to do is simplifying consonant clusters by dropping a middle t, yeah? Acts, acts, dialects, dialects. She asked me. She asked me. In this case, it's the k that gets dropped. George VI throne, George VI throne. Yeah. So one of the THs, one of the dental fricatives, has disappeared, and the famous word clothes, clothes. You can simplify, and is simplified by everyone, into close. Yeah? Also the voiced dental fricative here just disappears. Another one would be the loss of v, for instance, at the end of the preposition of, waste the money, a waste of money. Then another one, the plosive, the alveolar plosive gets elided. That is something that I can give you a German example for also. we also don't say Christkindlmarkt, but Christkindlmarkt or Christbaum. Yeah? There are two. The T is elided, and schwas, unstressed vowels are also elided. History, traveling, federal. These processes of these connected speech phenomena, of course, are more frequent and stronger the faster the tempo of talking is. And the third process, the linking, the linking R can only be appear in non-rhotic dialects like standard British English, because in American English it is pronounced in any case. So across word boundaries where the first word has got a R in the orthography, but it's not sounding like here, for, bar. Yeah? If the next word starts in a vowel, then this R is kind of activated. It becomes a linking R. Here are 4 eggs. Yeah? And this is a new bar and pub. And this is a very, very general phenomenon, and it has spilled over into cases where there is actually no underlying R in the orthography, but we still have sort of a final vowel and then an initial vowel, and a R intrudes. It just pops up basically out of nowhere. So we get Law and Order, China and Russia, Formula A, and, well, draw it. You can draw it. Yes, well, there's not enough time for the transcription recap, but let me just point out these extra slides that I put in this morning, and I will replace the upload. A full set. Oh no. We've got the skull and bones here for the velar nasal. Super. Oh no. Other things have happened. I have got to revisit that. All right. I have got to revisit. I think it is just on this computer here. All right. But the important thing is consonants for both main varieties, then a set of American English vowels. And the blue means that these are only in the American transcription, and a set of RP vowels, which means that, and where the coloring means that these are only there in the RP transcription. And there are some really interesting replacements of the symbols going on here. Well, yeah, and we have a transcription exercise, which I will bring solutions for next time. So please sit down and think about the 2 exercises. 3 sentences doing narrow transcription and including assimilation, linking, elision, weak forms and stress. And then a short coherent text, which is about the length of what you will have to do in the exam, about between 40 and 50 words. Okay? So, questions. Are there any questions? Yeah? The question is, should you focus more on British or more on American? You decide which one is yours, and then you focus only on that one. Okay? In the exam, I just have to repeat this for the recording, okay? In the exam, will there be only narrow transcription or only broad transcription or both? both. There will be 80% broad transcription and only 20% narrow transcription. So the coherent text will be broad. You will have only one sentence, like in this transcription exercise, yeah? One sentence for narrow transcription. All right? If there are no more questions right now, then let me thank you for your attention, and Julia will be back next Monday with you to talk about morphology. Thank you.